end of '94, we spent a week up at your grandfather's place in up the coast, Northern California, and spent a few days up there. And we're just sort of, Netscape was just taking off, and was just brainstorming what kinds of things could be done in the internet. So I think Reid in particular, and myself to a lesser extent, were thinking about the internet from the very beginning as it was getting started in '94.
There were actually two different trips we did at that place. One was where we read The Tempest and talked about kind of its implication in life. And then the other one is when we were with Max and Luke and we were talking about, what do we do with PayPal and what's coming on the internet afterwards.
Yes. The first one was actually more here in Northern California, not up there at '94. And I know at the time you already had all these ideas about the need to create new communities. There was sort of the idea of creating new games. There was sort of a board game, that would get sort of people to interact more, avoid the bowling alone at Columbine. So you were anti-bowling alone, a decade in advance of the book.
Yep. Well, it was, and in particular, what we had learned from the PayPal experience was a really interesting learning, in that you could actually go revolutionize an industry with people who are very smart, working hard, and deploying a technology that people hadn't seen before.
Yes.
Right. And so suddenly, which industries you might possibly go at become a much broader scope as a function of our experience at PayPal, because, like I would say that when we had conversations around this, like say
pre-PayPal,
early mid '90s. It was kind of like, well, we'd have to be really focused because we thought the number of
we have
opportunities.
to start with what we know.
Yes, exactly. Whereas, part of the whole thing is, remember, start with PayPal was, learning basic things about the financial services industry.
Chargebacks. What's that?
Yes, exactly. And so I think one of the things that was really instrumental, we also realized that assembling a crew of people who are very smart, very fast learners was kind of the key to a success in a startup, as opposed to trying to get someone who had, if they had 10 years experience doing something, that's great. But the more fundamental characteristic is, would they learn fast on the new problems and the new challenges?
Yeah, no, it always feels wrong to be anti-experience, but the place where it can backfire is if the experience makes you think that you know everything.
Yes.
And so it's important to know things, and it's important to be open to learning more. And in theory, experience is a plus. In practice, it's often a bit of a minus, because people are less open to learning new things, or they're more set on doing a particular job. In the context of a startup, which is always very tricky, where you have small numbers of people, and people need to be very flexible about the roles, and the roles change as the company gets built.
And almost any interesting startup ends up solving a new kind of problem in a new way. And if you said, well, these are the ways that I've done it over the last 5 to 10 years, and you stick to that, then that's actually friction about getting to the new kind of technological system.
It's one of the things that's very difficult about teaching entrepreneurship in general, is that there's maybe 20 or 30% where you follow certain rules, and there's certain processes for doing things, but 70 to 80% of it is about doing something that's never been done. If it's been done before, you're not really an entrepreneur. So the next Bill Gates probably will not start a desktop operating system. And
almost certainly
and even if you studied Bill Gates meticulously, you wouldn't go there. And the next Steve Jobs probably will not be building a smartphone.
Well, a smartphone, given that we're in such the tornado of different phones, that's possible. There would be a completely new smartphone. But for example, part of the whole reason why simply doing a desktop platform is, well, you have to understand what the mobile economy looks like. If you were just trying to do desktop, you'd be outmoded from day one.
Technology is by definition non-repetitive, and every moment in technological history only happens once. There's a point where things are developed for the first time, and then there's a point where they become normal and standard and not even surprising. So the big PayPal insight that we sort of came up with in the summer of '99 was the idea of linking money and email. As basic product insight. There's a lot we built around that, but that was sort of the key intuition. And it seems really simple, basic in retrospect, although we had spent 6-7 months in the business without thinking of that beforehand, and it turned out that was a really key idea. Once someone's thought about it, very easy to explain. Before the fact, nobody had thought of it.
And also, use of online was not so universal the notion of having everyone have an email address that is a link to a payment account was part of kind of the creating the future and the future anthropology. And one of the things that I think is most interesting is you actually have to throw out, to continue to succeed in doing interesting consumer internet projects, you have to realize that half of what you know in the next cycle will probably be thrown out, and you have to redo it. And that's one of the things, the reasons why I think the ability to kind of succeed in each new wave requires that mental agility and flexibility to say, what are the rules now?